friend, I'm Amy, and today we're talking about something that feels small, but it really matters a lot, being faithful in the little things. Every week, I use the simple method to break down a Bible passage step by step and show you how to connect it to everyday life. If you've ever wondered whether the small things you do for God really count, this lesson is for you. So let's get started. We're going to be going over the passage in Matthew. This is our last lesson on the theme of faithfulness. And it's building on what we're talking about, but at the same time, you can understand what we're talking about, even if you haven't watched a video before. But this is the last lesson in this month's series, and we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 25, the parable of the bags of gold in verses 14 through 30. So go ahead and turn over there. I'm going to write that passage on a post-it note so you can see it. Just in case. And then we are going to be walking through my simple method, which is an acronym for my steps to help you take notes on what you're reading and when you're Bible journaling. Matthew 25, verse 14 through 30. And this is the parable of the bags of gold. In one version, another version might say the parable of the talents. So we're going to dig into this passage and start with our first step, which is study. So study means that we are going to read it like we would if we were studying for tests at school type thing. So what I'm going to do is when I study for something, I'm reading a text, I'm trying to learn from it, I get a highlighter and it helps me focus and stay less chance of spacing out. And it also helps me kind of use those tools I used looking for main ideas and details, or what's the takeaway, what's an action phrase that I could take from this. Or if it's more of a storyline, I'm looking for characters and setting and trying to visualize it a little better. So we're going to go ahead and take a highlighter, any color, and I'm going to go through this parable. A parable is like a short story that Jesus tells to teach something bigger than what the story is. It symbolizes things. So for example, those fairy tales we grow up with as kids, they might be, the lesson might be to not lie or not steal or whatever it was from the like Goldilocks and the Three Bears type thing. So he would tell these parables and then you could relate to them because no matter what time period we were in, they had implications for how you could relate to them. So let's go ahead and read the parable of the bags of gold. And what I'm going to do is highlight kind of the main events so that we can follow it just like we would with Goldilocks, using those skills because we use those skills in real life and we don't use them in our Bible study. And it's not that those stories are equal, but it's those skills that will help us understand what we're reading because we use them in our daily life. So we need to use these skills in our daily Bible study because so many of us are reinventing the wheel. It's like, I know I've heard of this guy, I know I've heard of this place, I might have heard this story. Okay, but let's read it again and start from scratch. No, what we want is, yes, I have read this guy, I read this story, I know who this guy is, I know the place, I also know this parable is in another book or whatever you can link it to, and I know that this is what it's teaching us, and I've already started doing that or whatever. So that's the point of trying to study it like we do other texts. So here we go, verse 14. He says, again, it will be like a man going on a journey. And I want to notice that he's saying the word again because this is actually part of a larger conversation that's happening. And Jesus is the one telling this parable. So he's told a parable and now he's telling a second one. So it says, again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags of gold, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. And then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So I'm just highlighting. You can highlight whatever sticks out to you if you want to highlight longer sections. You can, if you want to highlight words, I'm not highlighting, go for that. But I'm just trying to look at the main idea. So when I go back and look at it, I'm like, okay, the guy with 5 bags of gold gained 5 more bags. So I'm seeing it real quick. So I've highlighted 5 bags of gold, 2 bags, and 1 bag in verse 15. And then I highlighted gained 5 more bags in verse 16. Verse 17 says, so also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. Gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. So I'm going to highlight hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had the 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I've gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come share your master's happiness. And there's a lot there. I could highlight that whole section, but I'm just highlighting kind of where to start in that conversation. So I highlighted, well done, good and faithful servant. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I've gained 2 more. And his master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. I'm going to highlight those because those repeat. They both did the same thing. The 5 got 5 more, the 2 got 2 more. So he says the same thing. You've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you had not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you. And his master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So I'm highlighting right here. You could see his 3 replies. Well done, good and faithful servant. Well done, good and faithful servant. You wicked, lazy servant. So he describes the servant these times, and you find out very quickly how he feels about their actions. So you knew you should not have so you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gathered where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I return, I would have received it back with interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. So I'm going to highlight that because that's another action that happened. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Throw the servant into the darkness. For whoever has will be given more. So those are some other things that I'm highlighting. Okay, right now you might have a lot more questions than answers, and that's okay because we're just on the first step, and that's what the steps build on your understanding and application of the passage. So we're going to go ahead and move on to step number 2, which is illustrate. Okay, when we illustrate, a lot of you are like, yeah, I don't do that. I'll just skip this step. But this is not like typical Bible journaling when you see online and stuff. A lot of it is drawing this big elaborate landscape or writing out this calligraphy scripture verse. That's not what we're doing here. That is more of a meditative type of journaling. This is more a note-taking, I want to learn this to retain it myself or teach it to other people. So these illustrations aren't serving a purpose of looking beautiful. They're serving a purpose of making visual what you're reading. So it might be symbols. It might be drawing out a scene of what's happening. It might even be, I kind of consider color coding as part of the illustrating because it's that visual. It's making things stand out, and so that you can move on to the map step and organize that information. So this is helping us organize information. There's a couple things we could do. I like the idea of illustrating what's the scene that's going on. Another thing we could do is color code. And I think that would be good. We could just go over our yellow. A lot of times I like to use yellow because it's easy to go over. Or you could have done this at the beginning. If you're watching this now and you're going to do it afterward, you just color code right from the study step. But I'm going to get 3 colors. Let's do a pink and a green and a yellow. And so we're going to just go over this again. And I'm going to make a little key right here. Pink, yellow, and green. Okay, and what we're going to do is just go through and color code. I picked 3 colors because there's 3 men. So the first man, the servant with 5 bags, is given the 5 bags of gold. This one's given 2 bags, and this one's given 1 bag. So I'm going to follow their stories and highlight in that color. So we've got yellow's already highlighted, so I'll probably just do the 5 and the 1. Okay, so 5 bags of gold. That was in verse 15. He gained 5 more bags. I'm just going to go over that highlight in verse 16. And then he presents his bags in verse 21. And then at the end, he actually was given the 1 bag that was not used wisely. So now his 10 bags, his 5 made 5, plus he earned that 1 bag. Okay, so then the next section, oh, whoever has been given more, that's part of his too. Okay, so the next section is 2 bags, gain 2 more. Well done, good and faithful servant. And then those stay yellow. And then the third person, he had 1 bag, so I'm going to do that verse in 15. I'm going to do that green. In 18, he hid his master's money. I'm going to do that in green. And then he said, you wicked, lazy servant. So I'm going to highlight that yellow one in green again. And then throw him outside into the darkness. So I'm going to highlight that. So now I've just gone over, I haven't highlighted new stuff. I just went back over the stuff that I highlighted and categorized it basically. So now when I'm doing my organizing, mapping stuff out, I can look over here real quick and get those notes real quick instead of reading this 3 times or however many times it takes for me to keep it fresh in my mind. So we have the 5 bags of gold. So I'm just going to draw as detailed as you want. Then I'm going to draw this little bag of 1, and then we have 5. And you literally could just do squares or circles, but I feel like doodling. Except I can't remember how to draw bags. Says the 5 bags plus 5 bags plus the 1 bag. That bag's having a hard time. Okay, then we have the 2 bags. And I'm going to leave a little space because I'm going to label these in the next step. I'm not going to worry about the explanation yet. Goodness, you'd think my bag drawings would get better with time, but each bag I draw I feel is a little crazier than the last. I'm trying to draw like a little sack that's been tied with a ribbon. Do what you can. Okay, then the last guy had 1 bag. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm trying to mix it up. Okay, so I've illustrated, so now I can kind of see what, I can retell the story a little bit. So I know there was situation 1, he had 5 bags, he earned 5 more bags, and then he actually got, he had to give his bag to the first guy. And then this guy had 2 bags, and then he got 2 more. Okay, so now we're going to do the next step, which is map. And map is where I take some kind of diagram. That was thinking maps when I taught, but they're basically a fancy word for graphic organizers. So I might do like a flow chart to show the sequence of events that are happening. I could do just a list of comparison, or a circle map, a T-chart, those tree maps, about genealogies and stuff, and about how people are related to each other. There's all kinds of different ones I use. But this one had a pretty big illustration step that we did. So we're just going to build on that. And we're going to just label this step so that we can understand how to move on and personalize it and link it to other things. So here we go. So basically what we're going to do is man number 1, man number 2, and man number 3. So here's where we're kind of labeling stuff. So given 5, earned 5, gifted 1, given 5, earned 5. I mean 2, sorry. Saved 1. And then he lost 1. So that's just giving you a little bit more explanation. And if you've ever watched my videos, every time I do this step, it looks totally different, but we still use these steps. So even on the page next to it, if you've done another lesson with me, over here, we talked about this passage in the past section that was about end times. I used the color coding again because it was a lot. I kind of color coded what is bad that's coming and what is good that's coming, because it talks about the end of the world and it talks about good things and bad things. And then I could color code them. We put some symbols next to them. And then I just basically made a list of the order, how they listed it out, of what is going to be happening at the end times. And so this is easy for me to look at real quick. Also, it's interesting that you have this and then you have these notes can help you make connections of why would he say that and then start saying this? Do they have any connection? Why do the stories seem very different? But now that you've gone through those stories and you have those, when you lay out your Bible like that, you can see these connections. Oh, look at here. Throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And we've heard about hell, this thing called hell. There's supposed to be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So he's probably talking about hell. And when do we really talk about hell? When we die, the end of the world, the end times. So really he's telling this parable building off what he just talked about. And this one is very plain language. And this one is more symbolic and trying to ask for, you have to dig deeper and get understanding into that. But what he's saying is still connected. It's like a speech where he has different elements, but they all have the same message. And so I love that, building on that knowledge of what we're learning. So this is our map step. And the next step is personalize. And personalize is where we take all the information that we've been given and going, okay, now what do we do with this? So not only is it important to understand the information so that you're retaining it and building on it, we are not just studying this book so that we can impress people in Bible class or just get a big ego about how smart we are. It's not that we stop there. The reason we're studying it is where we go to the personalized. What does this mean for me? How is this going to change the way I act, or what I feel like my purpose is, or who God's called me to be, or what I learn about God, things like that. So right here, 3 ideas that I have for personalize are always create a prayer, a journal prompt, and a memory verse. So pray, journal, memorize, I guess. We need some action words. So I always look in the section that we're reading and I'm like, what would be good to pray in this? And it doesn't have to be exact, but it's more of a prayer where you keep your eyes open and you kind of turn these words and these lessons into a prayer as you read. And you might want to do that last after you look through these other ones, but to get more insight, more ideas. But it might be like this. Okay, Lord, I understand that the 5 bags of gold symbolize the things that you give us, these gifts that you give us, these blessings. And I want to be like the men who invested their money well and not the one that was so fearful. Lord, help me not to be fearful. Help me to give back or use those gifts you've entrusted me with. Lord, I don't know what my five bags of gold are. Reveal those to me. Give me wisdom in how to use those. Thank you so much that you reward the risks that we take, and that you call us to do that, and that's more exciting than just sitting in fear. I pray that when I see you face to face, that you'll say, well done, good and faithful servant. So there's just kind of thinking through the text and turning it into a prayer. So I'm not necessarily repeating words, or you can, it's just whatever you're kind of seeing and talking through. But I keep my eyes open so that I can look at the text, but I'm praying to God as I say it. Another thing is you could journal. What's a journaling prompt that we could have out of this? Maybe, what are my 5 bags of gold? Or do I think God's actually given me 1 bag? How do I feel like I'm dealing with this? Am I holding on to these? Am I going and getting so much more that it's just falling in my lap from the people who aren't using it well? What does that mean? Does that mean monetary? Does that mean business? Does that mean family? Does that mean whatever it is? Journal about what you think that might be specifically in your life, and how you're dealing with how you're using those gifts or those blessings. And then the last thing is memorize. So find something that stuck out to you that you'd like to remember as you go about your week. This one, I like just this repetition they did of well done, good and faithful servant. You could do it as far as, you've been faithful with a few things, I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. You could memorize all that. One way to do that is just take another Post-it note, write that verse down, and stick it somewhere and just look at it every day. But I love that idea of we're just remembering, well done, good and faithful servant, to focus on, that's what I desire for God to say to me. So what do I need to do for him to say that? And then remembering that it's not earning that praise. It's out of that outflow of love. You've already dedicated yourself to him. He's already loves you. But what could you do to make him proud of what he's given you, to use it to bring more people to his kingdom? So I love memorizing that encouraging phrase. And then the next step is link. And that is where we take what we've read and we make sure that we haven't taken it out of context. And we've already kind of talked about, when we looked over at chapter 24, how he's talking about the day and the time, or the end of the earth. If we look at the passage right before it, he's telling another parable. It might be interesting to read that one and see what that has to do with this. And then he's also talking about the day and the hour unknown. And I think that's interesting, even without reading this, to think about, why would he say the day and the hour are unknown? And then down here, reward the people that took the risk in investing their gold instead of hiding it. And I think a lot of times we are so focused on our safety and the security of our future that we hold on to our money and our gifts and our talents so much, because it's like, I need to save this for when I'm ready, or when we might need it, or whatever. And it holds us back. And God reminds us, listen, you don't even know if you're going to reach retirement, or if you're going to need that money in retirement, or maybe that gift is not going to be for when you're older. Maybe it's for right now, and you're going to have a different gift and when you're older. Whatever it is, I love this reminder just in this one line, that you don't even know what the future holds. So just seize the day, seize the moment, and use the gifts God's given you to bless others. So using that, the link helps you understand, get a little more perspective about what you're reading. I always like to look down here in the footnotes too if you're finding anything else that gives you more information. Like for example, in verse 15, it has a little B next to the one bag. There's a tiny B. And if I go down here, the footnotes, it says Greek 5 talents. So that means in Greek, when they translated this, because this was originally written in Greek, not English, 5 talents, 2 talents, and 1 talent. It says, also throughout this parable, a talent was worth about 20 years of a day laborer's wage. So 1 talent, let's see. Oh, I see. It says 1 bag. So these bags are also called talents in another translation. So what I'm going to do right here is just add to my notes what else I learned. 1 bag or 1 talent. And then also know this is worth 20 years wages. And that's a lot of money. I'm over here thinking like, oh, is this $10? Is this, $1 coin? What is this? Did he make $11 here? No, this 1 bag, this 1 talent, it tells us in the footnotes, is worth 20 years wages. So then when you see he's lost 20 years wages and gave it to this guy who now has 20 years wages times 11, that just makes you think, okay, now I almost want to go back to that journal prompt and say, what is something that's really valuable that I'm holding on to? It's not, what is this one tiny thing that I'm thinking about? It's like, what is something really big in my life that God's asking me to bless other with? So that's when we really kind of dig into like, what am I willing to give up? Is that money? Is that time? Is that service? Whatever it is. And so always check out these footnotes because they give you lots of extra information. And then as always, I like to let you know that this is what I do for a living, is help you understand how to study scripture. So in my own time, I have gone through and outlined the entire Bible. I have cheat sheets or notes. I call them simple notes using my acronym that teach you, that have visuals like this, to go over every single book of the Bible, just a snapshot, either in 1 or 2 pages, depending on the length. And these have always been digital on my site. You just download them and then you can get a group license if you're teaching them. They're great for teachers. But I wanted to let you know that I'm actually compiling these these notes into books. And I just launched my Old Testament notes. So I don't have the New Testament notes in a physical book, but it is coming in a few months. And I wanted to just show you real quick what you would do. This is not available as a physical book yet, but I wanted to show you kind of my mock-up of what I'm working on. These Matthew cheat sheets are available digitally. And the reason I show you Matthew is because we're in the book of Matthew. And this just gives you an overview of what is happening in the book of Matthew. To give you some context, the book of Matthew starts with a genealogy of how do we get from Adam all the way down to Jesus. And so this kind of gives you some insight into that. And it tells you about the 12 apostles, which we're not really talking about right now, but that's good to know because it's other parts of Matthew. It tells you that the Old Testament was written 400 years, or the New Testament was written 400 years after the Old Testament. So that's kind of the time period we're in. And then over here, it kind of gives you the major events. But what I want you to know is we're talking about a parable right now. And actually, since Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all are similar accounts of Jesus's life, I have the parable outline is over in Luke right here. And so if you look right here, this is a chart that shows all the parables and which ones are repeated in other books of the Bible. So I always look this up when I'm teaching a lesson about a parable. Okay, is there another account of this same exact parable that will give us some more insight? So I'm going to look at this. It says talents. So the parable of the talents, and another version says mina. This version we're using right now says bags, but I know it's the parable of the talents. And if I look over here, it shows me this parable is in Matthew and it's also in Luke. So that's going to be something I want to look up. What does the book of Luke say about this? So these cheat sheets give you a quick overview, history, concepts, repetitions, main ideas, lots of stuff over there. But the Old Testament is ready to ship to your house. The New Testament is still digital download. So you can go over to my shop and get all the details of that. But those are books that are resources to go with whatever you're studying. So you're going to use them forever. You're not just another workbook collecting dust on your shelf. And I love sharing those with you. I love hearing about how you're using them. But let's move on to that last step, which is expand. And that means keep going. Use this momentum you've got to keep going. And when we are so focused on the quality or the quantity of how much we're studying the Bible, the preachers or your Bible study teacher might be like, you need to do 5 days of homework, or the Bible study teacher's like, if you're not in the Word every day or whatever, and it just becomes so overwhelming. It's like that exercise. You can like get off of it, and then you just, binge on junk food because you feel like, oh, I've already failed. I don't want us to get caught in those traps. This is about encouraging you to keep going and focusing on that quality. So if it's only once a week that you have a really good quality study, that's better than 7 days of how fast can I play catch up and just space out what I'm reading just to check off the box. So I'd love for you to read it every day. I know that is not always doable in the season you're in. So I want you to give yourself grace and focus on that quality study instead of the quantity. The expand is just that challenge for make a plan since you're here, when you're going to study next and what you're going to study. And I always offer lots of resources to help you with that. I'm coming out with a 365 days plan for you next year as we walk through the Old Testament. It's not to guilt trip you. It's just to give you that next step to expand. And the passages will be very short so that we can feel like we can catch up. That's why I just want to do the Old Testament and then the following year do the New Testament. So we're not trying to cram as much as we can because we want to build on that knowledge so that we're growing in spiritual growth and just living the lives that Jesus has called us. I found so much joy and peace in being able to study the Bible this way. So thank you so much for studying with me. This parable is such a great reminder that what we do with what we have been given really matters to God, even in the littlest things. If this simple method helps you see this passage more clearly, I'd love for you to grab my free guide at amycenter.com/simple and check out the creative Bible tools I've got in my shop while you're there. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss our upcoming study on the next fruit of the Spirit, gentleness. And keep showing up. Your faithfulness counts. Thanks, guys. See you next time.